Hello, everyone. Welcome to the official channel of Gingerbeard Man Gamer. This will be the first of a series that I am starting up. Potentially, we'll see how it goes. Today, I'm going to be talking about the three variations of Flash that I have played, my thoughts on them, what I personally think there are the pros and cons, and let you guys decide which you think is better or which you would like to run better, or if these are the type of lists that you guys are looking into. So let me go ahead and switch over to the deck lists here. The first one that we have is Damir Flash. For those that might not know, Damir is just blue-black. This mana base is probably the cleanest. Uh, we have the two Fabled Passages and two of each of the utility castles, and then outside of that, it's full four water graves, two temples, and then a bunch of basics. So not really gonna have to worry about missing out on colors too often. Every now and then you might not get that second black for Slitherwisp on time or what have you, but most of the time it's going to be pretty consistent, which is a good draw to just going with Damir. Um, this version is a lot more of the old like mono blue tempo style where you're just laying a few threats or one or two threats and protecting them and making sure that they don't do anything else. So we have our spectral sailors in there, so we can turn one and hopefully mutate the Sea Dasher Octopus onto it on turn two, start drawing cards, start getting ahead, and just outvalue them right out the gates and never let them get back any type of advantage on you. Cunning Nightbonder is great. It's essentially used to make sure that your stuff can't be countered, but making your flash spells cost one less do help. Make Summon of the Sea into just a 1 mana scry 2 draw a card, which is fantastic. Turns Brazen Borrower into a 2-drop. It turns Cutthroat into a 1-drop. Also, the main draw is it turns Ashiok's Erasure into a 3-drop. So this being uncounterable is one of the things that I'll talk about in every single one of the decks because this pair is in all of them, and it is such a great pair. Uncounterable, counter your thing, make sure you can't ever cast it again is pretty great. It even gets around stuff like Shifting Ceratops because you're not actually countering it, you're just exiling the spell. Absolutely fantastic. Slitherwisp is another thing that made this style of deck possible. We've had the mono blue and the Simic Flash before, but honestly, I don't think those are as powerful anymore. I think you kind of have to have the black spells in here because Slitherwisp and Heartless Act are just too good to not have. So that's our kind of our little draw to just being Damir there is we can cast this on turn 3 quite often. I went with Sinister Sabotage over Neutralize. I feel like the cycling just isn't as worth it as I thought it would be. I tried it out in all of the lists and I initially just, I don't know. I was hoping that the cycle would matter more, but more often than not, I would have rather just been able to have the card selection. And then we got our full 4 Quench, 2 Brazen Borrowers. I'm not too high on Brazen Borrower right now. I've honestly been trying to cut them from most of the lists, but it gives something to mutate the octopus onto, and it is a pretty good tempo play. So, Omen of the Sea is something that is a little bit more playable, mainly because like I said before, the Nightbonder makes it 1 mana, and also it's another trigger for Slitherwisp. So a lot of the times you want to just get as much advantage as you can once Slitherwisp hits the battlefield, and this helps out with that. And Scry 2 draw a card is not bad. Now, the sideboard, if you could tell, is very geared to try and beat like Mono Red and Sakdos. It's definitely the hardest matchup for this version. So we have a full 4 Disfigures in the side, 3 Cry of the Canarium, and 2 Enter the God Eternals. Those are all for the aggro matchups. Cry of the Canarium goes more for Sakdos, but it can hurt aggro decks too, especially since I've seen Calamity coming back a little bit more. And then you got Grafdigger's Cage and Mystical Disputes for the Gyruda and Bant matchups. Also Urian, however you say that. And then Grafdigger's Cage is also good for the Sakdos decks. So that is that version there. And then Grixis Flash. It is definitely the most controlly of the three. You'll notice this version has about, what is it, 22 creatures, because you want to just lay the one or two threats and get the advantage going. This only has 8. I only have the 4 Cutthroat and the 4, where did you go? The 4 Slitherwisp. The reason being is this one is a lot more reactive, and it's running 3 Shark Typhoons. I almost bumped it up to a 4th one over the Chemistry's Insight, but I don't think it's really all that worth it. It is a really good card, and it helps us beat Teferi, but we'll see. It might need up into going up to the 4th, but so I still have the 2 Omen of the Seas. You're going to see a lot of the same cards in most of these, 4 Quench, 2 Omen of the Sea, 3 Heartless Act, 4 Cutthroat. The main difference in adding the red is we get Ionize, which is a really good counter spell to help, just slowly grind them down and then kill them, chip away at them with Ionize and Slitherwisp, and then before they know it, they don't have any life left. We also get Bedevil. Bedevil is much better to me in my head than running something like Murderous Rider, because most of the time the 2 life from Murderous Rider will end up mattering. There's, obviously against the mid-range matchups, it doesn't, or other control matchups, it really doesn't matter all that much, but there's a lot of aggro running around. There's a lot of like Mardu Humans and Winota and Sakdos decks that chip away and chip away and chip away, so 2 life matters a lot. We also get 3 main deck Scorch and Dragonfire. These are really good for the Sakdos decks if they don't have the oven, or if you can work a way around with, when they are using the oven and whatnot. Gets rid of Lurrus permanently as long as they don't have the oven. Stuff like that. Scorching Dragonfire is great. Also helps us kill Teferi, which is the absolute worst thing to have on the battlefield when you're playing a flash deck. If Teferi is on the field, I can't cast most of my spells when I would like to cast them, which is also why Shark Typhoon helps out a lot there. Sideboard, you'll notice I have 3 Grafdigger's Cage and 3 Mystical Dispute in every single sideboard. They're my never leave home without them spells. They're just too good right now. They shut down too many things. Like Grafdigger's Cage even shuts down Winota too, because they can't play it off the library. And it also shuts down Yadaro if people are starting to run more cycle decks. I've noticed that as well. See, it's about the only thing that it shuts off in that, but it is helpful. Continuing with the red, we do get Red Cap Melee for mono red decks. Sometimes for Sakdos, depending on the version. The Obosh version, this one is a little bit better on, since it's 1 mana kill Obosh. Got a couple negates for the control matchups, couple Noxious Grasp. That's mainly for Bant to help kill like Questing Beast or Shifting Ceratops should they bring them in. And then I have 3 Tails End in this version. Another way to stop Teferi, also stops the activated ability or the triggered ability on Gyruda if that becomes a thing, but I wanted to try out Tails End, and so far it's been fine. I like it. The mana base, this has the worst of the 3 decks because there are no Grixis lands. So you really have to stretch to try and make sure that you are getting all of your mana on time. And so we do run a few less basics because of that, and we can't run any castles. There are too many times where I try and play even 1 or 2 castles and I draw it at the wrong time, and now I'm behind tempo and I lose everything. So there are 6, is it 6? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, there are 5. No, there's 6. There's 6 temples in there. Just to help smooth everything out. It's very, very important to find things on time. So it's a little bit of a heavier end of the black too, with 4 double black Bedevils and 4 double black Slitherwisp, but should be perfectly fine on that. And then for the last one, we have Sultai Flash. This one is a drastic change because I have 27 creatures and even more on the sideboard. This one is just about, it's basically about going wide. It only has 4 Sinister Sabotage and 3 Quench as any type of counterspell. Everything else is just, well, I guess Frilled Mystic too, but it's more of a creature than it is a counterspell. It just happens to also counter things. That's just a bonus. But this one is taking advantage of Slitherwisp in a different way, where it's just trying to use the creatures that it can play to draw the card, do the life gain, all that kind of stuff. This one also has Wildborn Preserver. It's something that green does add. This thing actually can get pretty huge, and it can get there quicker than Brianborn can. And the reach actually does matter a lot of the times. The downside is this version has a much harder time dealing with stuff like Shifting Ceratops, should people bring them in. I could be running more Heartless Axe, but I really just want the creature base to be as high as I can while still maintaining some sort of interaction. So I could sideboard in to do that, but I'll get to that in a minute. So this whole game plan is just basically constantly having a threat to play and then grinding them out with Nightpack Ambusher. Nightpack is still a pretty good card. It does get a little outclassed these days, but if you get to untap with a Nightpack Ambusher and you get to last a couple of turns, you're probably going to win the game unless something just goes horribly wrong, which is possible. This also has 24 lands because a lot of the spells are on the higher side. We have more like 4 drops than any of the other decks do, other than the Crixus one. But we have a lot of temples for that too. So the mana base on this is a little bit better. I could be playing more of the Triomes, but I really don't want things coming in tapped more than they need to. So I probably could bump this up at least one more. We're back to running a bit more basics on this, but the mana base is a little bit better. Got full 4 breeding pools and overgrown tombs, and if we only have 3 of the water graves because of the sideboard plan, but we'll get to that here in a minute. And we can warrant at least 1 castle in here, mainly because there are going to be times that we don't have much to do, and the green is a pretty light splash. I mean, we only have the 2 Frilled Mystics, 4 Night Packs, and Wildborn Preservers, all of which you don't really mind having later in the game. So it's a little bit easier to handle that. Sideboard wise, again, 3 Dispute, 3 Gratrigger's Cage. Never leave home without them. I have 2 Disfigure right now because this deck does still have problems with any type of aggro deck, really. Mono red is a huge issue. If they get the right draw, there's absolutely nothing I can do. Even after sideboard, sometimes there's just, okay, you've got it, you win. The difference with the Sultai is I tried to go a little bit more of a transformational route, because there are plenty of times where people are just, they sideboard into more ways to get back to fairy, or just a lot of counter spells that, if you get behind on tempo, you're screwed. There's nothing you can do. It's really hard to catch back up. Slitherwisp does help that out a little bit, but more often than not, it's going to be too hard to catch back up, and your spells just aren't going to matter that much. So sideboarding into a more mid-rangey plan with the 3 Hydroid Crixus, 3 Nissa, and 1 Vraska, that allows us to shift things over, and when they're sideboarding in for, oh, well, I'm going to bring in a bunch of stuff that counters or can't be countered or whatever, well, we take all those out and we switch into a mid-range deck, and now we're playing a completely different game. So, we keep our stuff like our Nightpack Ambushers and probably the Preserver, but we cut out like the Quenches, we cut out probably some number of Sinister Sabotage, and more than likely the Brineborn Cutthroats. because we're not going to be playing on their turn more often than what would be in our original game plan. The preservers are still fine just because they can get, Nightpack Ambusher can grow them, Slitherwisp can grow them. Like everything in our deck helps grow the preserver, and it's still fine to have. But we're not going to be playing things on the opponent's turn as much, so those are perfectly fine to take out there. So more than likely what we would do, because that's what, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If we were just bringing those 7 in, we would take out the 4 Cutthroat and the 3 Quench and be done with it. And so that's, completely transformational and a fun way to do it. As far as which one I like better out of the 3, I honestly think the Grixis Flash. I think it can handle more. It shores up a lot of the hardships that Flash has had recently with the more aggro and sacrifice decks. I think this has a better time dealing with stuff like that. And ultimately, this still has a great matchup against the Gyruda decks and basically any mid-range deck. Fires is not as big of a deal. They can get ahead if you let fires go for too long, then they will get to do everything that they want to do, and you can't catch up from that. But overall, I just think this has a better reward for splashing into another color. The mana base is a little bit harder, but I definitely think it's worth it. Just having access to things like Bedevil and Ionize really help this game plan out. And then Scorching Dragonfire is huge. So if I had to choose, this is the version that I would be playing more. If you want to go with a more consistent one, I would honestly just stick with the Damir. Sultai's fine. I think it's good. I just think that it still has a lot of the problems that Simic Flash does, where it can't handle certain cards, and that's not the kind of thing that you want. But if you're running a more creature base and you don't want to feel bad about casting a bunch of counters and kill spells, the Sultai one is the way to go. But if you're looking for the true tempo-y gameplay, Damir, but if you're looking for the more patient control matchup version, then Grixis Flash is your way to go on that. So this will be my video on this. I will right here. Just let me know what you guys think, if it's something that I should continue, or what type of decks you guys would like to see next. I know just about every deck out there has multiple versions that you can play. I mean, Bant has multiple versions. Gyruda even has multiple versions. So if that's something that you would like to do or like to see, just let me know, and I will do what I can to facilitate that. All right, thank you very much, and I will see you guys next time.